Hey guys, Lothar here. I'm doing a guest spot for Tempestone regarding my Mage deck, the secret Mage deck that I played at Steed Story Cup, and quite frankly, it went really good for me back then. With this deck, it had a really huge surprise factor against my opponents, and yeah, it's a really cool deck to play. It's so much fun. So it's kind of different from the other decks like straightforward to face like Zoo or Hunter. This kind of mage is like a mid-range deck, but because of the all spells that you have, the secrets, you can actually mind games. You can put mind games in your opponent and actually bluff a lot with this deck, which is really cool, and it's also only possible with well, Hunter in this metagame, because who plays Paladin of Secrets, right? So first of all, this deck, I will do a breakdown each card with each choice. But first of all, I wanted to tell you that this mage is like a mix between three decks. It might be aggressive, it might be mid-range because you have a few creatures that are basically played between turn 3 and 6 and can basically, you can win the game at turn 6, 7 maybe. And you have also a late game in form of Ragnaros, and you have also duplicated to actually pull off a triple Ragnaros, which is, well, quite frankly, it happens more often than you would think. So this is a weird deck, and there are some weird choices you will have to make during playing this deck, because you want to get some value out of the duplicates of the mirror entities. So you might be finding yourself in some spots when you have to make the proper call when it comes to tempo, and which secrets to play at which point, which will depend against the deck we're playing against. Like it's different to play a mirror entity on turn 2 against a druid, it's different to play a mirror entity against an example, a warlock on turn 2, and there are many small things you have to take in factor. But yeah, what is with this deck is also important is this mage is one of the decks that actually benefits from the coin so much that you want to get the coin every single time. It's basically like a miracle rogue. You want the coin every single time because of the first card, which is put into the deck. It's Mana Worm. The creature, 1 mana for 1.1 attack creature with 3 HP is, well, it's not bad, right? But actually doesn't trade with anything or almost anything in current metagame apart from, well, Leper Gnome and Web Spinners. So having the coin in your disposal is actually making the Mana Worm a turn 1 Undertaker with a 1 buff, which is, well, we know how that works. It's really good and it can win games. So basically, we have a mini Undertaker here with 1 buff, with a half of a buff already being played in form of the HP points. So basically, when we have like 4 Undertakers in this deck, this will pose a threat to our opponent in the early game. Like this is a serious threat. Your opponent has to respond to that, because if he just let the mana worms and undertakers roam on the board, you can win right there, right? If you have the coin and a frostbolt and a mana worm undertaker or whatever, you can just win on turn 2 and turn 3, because all the tempo gains that you will have from having so much attack and so much health points on your creatures. So those are no-brainers. Mana worm and undertaker are just cool creatures to play. Undertaker is the best 1 mana drop in the game right now, and well, in current metagame, because you know this might be changed in the next expansion because there will be more mechs, so who knows. But right now, Undertaker is the card to play, and almost every single deck that relies on creatures will play Undertaker. So we got 4 cards covered in this deck. And let's move on. Frostbolt. Also a no-brainer, because you want to achieve 2 things with having a projectile from 2 mana. One thing is to actually have a response to Undertaker of your opponent, so like a breath in Druid, like a backstab or eviscerate, in Miracle Rogue, like a what else? Like a Fury Warx in case of Warrior, because he has no projectile in form, like in a spell, so he has to deal with the weapon. But we are playing Mage, so we have to find another way, which is the Frostbolt. And Frostbolt can act two ways. It can be an aggressive card, like being played just as a finisher, which is great, or it can be a defensive card against a small creature, which just be instantly killed. But the freeze is also important, because in this mage, tempo is everything you got in this deck. You don't rely on a massive card draw, so you want to win with the tempo advantage, which is granted by the secret and by freezing your opponent. And you got focus that actually freeze your opponent, which are Frostbolts and Waterlomancers, which will be covered later. So Frostbolt also is a spell which combos with Manavim, so yeah, kind of no-brainer here. Next card, Loot Hoarder. We have to get some card draw anyway in this deck, and there's also Death Rattle, which combos with the Undertaker, so it's kinda similar approach when it comes to being a combo and a pressure defensive card at the same time as Frostbolt, but without an instant board pressure. I don't know the word, maybe. But the point is, you want to get a buff for your Undertaker, and you're not playing 100 creepers in the deck, so you have to find something else for the 2 spot, because you want to get something on your 2 mana turn to actually buff the Undertaker if you play it on turn 1. So the obvious choice here is either Loot Hoarder or a Talnos. But in this version we don't play Talnos, we want to play 2 Loot Hoarders, because Loot Hoarders are actually trading with a 2 mana creature, like a true drop, which is 2-3, 3-2, so it can be easily traded. So Loot Hoarders are also acting as a card draw, and we are lacking that in this deck, and that is crucial, because you're playing a creature on the board, you will get a card draw from it, and you can also buff one of your creatures, so triple forces in one card, which is really cool. And the even better is Mad Scientist here. When Xenos was released, when I saw Mad Scientist, it instantly became one of my, maybe even the most interesting card in my opinion in the game. Mad Scientist has so much value in it that actually can pull off some really weird tricks, and it shines in Mage, because secrets of the Mage secrets are the most expensive ones, so we get most value out of the Mad Scientist. You just play a Mad Scientist, and if it gets killed without being silenced, you get 3 mana for free. Like, it's a 1.5 innovate. That's insane. And you also, what is more important, you also get to thin your deck. So every single draw after getting a Mad Scientist killed will have more chance to actually draw something you really like. Like, all the secrets you play, and we play 5 in this deck, are being meant to play for free. You don't want to pay mana for them, unless you're really in a tough spot or you want to get in a specific position on board. But almost always want to get those secrets for free without paying any mana. So Mad Scientists are just insane useless in this deck. They are the Undertaker buffs. They are sharing the 2 mana spot with Loot Hoarder, which is also really cool, with the mana curve we have in this deck. And it draws a card which is actually being instantly played, which is just insane. I love Mad Scientist, and it's one of my favorite cards of all time in Hearthstone. So yeah, crafting golden ones was the priority for me when Nexomas came out. And now we are getting to the secrets, which are really important, of course. We got 2 counter spells, 1 duplicate and 2 mirror entities. And 5 secrets feels like the amount of secrets you want to have in this deck, because having more secrets can actually really hurt you, and you don't want to get like double duplicates. I mean, you want to get the most value out of a Mad Scientist when you actually have a chance to draw the secret that you need in a particular situation. So playing on the three types of secrets, and one being a single one, actually makes you easier, makes your choices easier, because if you draw into one counter spell in your hand, you have more chances to draw the mirror entity than duplicate or counter spell, and you can also play the counter spell earlier to get only duplicate or mirror entity. So, and if you have the duplicate already in hand, then you can only get counter spell and mirror entity. And if you would have two duplicates in your deck, then you can or like pull a mad scientist with then you could pull the second duplicate with a mad scientist, which would be really hurtful for your tempo game, because you don't want to get the duplicate really early on. The counter spells and mirror entity are the secrets you want to get early on, and the duplicate is just for turns 5, 6, 7, when you get duplicate from Lothar, duplicate from Sludgebelter, duplicate from Sylvanas, from Ragnaros. Those are mostly, of course, the targets you want to get from duplicate. And counterspells and mirror entity are just insanely good when you don't pay mana for them. Like, it almost feels like cheating. And the thing with counterspell is also why you want to be on the coin. Because if your opponent has a coin and he actually keeps it until you play a counterspell, then you've, well, screwed. Because the counterspell will counterspell the coin, because the coin is a spell, and this sucks. This sucks for us because, especially if you paid 3 mana for the counterspell, we almost certainly lose a game because of the single coin that will ruin your like a whole turn, or maybe a most of the turn you just played with this single counterspell being hardcasted from your hand. So, but otherwise, counterspell is insanely good when you get that from the Mad Scientist or from the Kuntor Mage, because counterspelling a swipe, a Force of Nature, Savage Roar, or Siphon Soul, Shadow Flame, Hellfire just feels so good and actually wins you game. When an opponent relies on like clearing the board in turn 5 or turn 4, and you actually get to do that without losing any mana or any card draw because of the Mad Scientist, it's a game. Basically, it's game unless your opponent has a second board clear in an upcoming turn and you don't have a more creatures on the hand. But basically, that's the game. So Counterspell is one of the best cards in this decks, and it has many purposes, because it's also a counterspell to minions when you play against a hunter which plays Animal Companion. So that's also a cool thing. Duplicate, as I said before, it's mostly for the big creatures, for your Loteps, for your Slab Belchers, for your Sylvanas, for your Ragnaroses, but they can also be used on loot hoarders when you really rely on drawing more cards because your hand sucks, like you have only secrets and you need to draw the current Tower Mages, so actually like playing Duplicate to get a loot hoarders is also okay. It's also okay, you can do that, you can also like duplicate Mad Scientist unless you got secrets in your hand. But you can do many things with that card, and like I feel the worst duplicate targets in this deck are actually Undertakers. Because of the amount of death rattles in this deck, and there are like only 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, but Sylvanas, yeah, you know, it's basically 7. 7 death rattles is not so much when you play the Undertakers, but the thing is, Undertakers are such a huge threat for your opponent that he has to deal with them immediately. So you don't have to play so many death rattles. You just want to put that on the board and draw the missiles from your opponent's hand, the weapons or whatever, so you can just play your bigger threats here. And yeah, that's about Duplicate. Mirror Entity. What can I say about Mirror Entity? It's good even when you play it for 3 mana from your hand, and it's just way beyond broken when you play it for free. It's just pure cheating when you can get a even a free 3 mana, 3/3 creature feels really good, and if you get that for not even playing a card from your hand, like from the Mad Scientist, well, it feels kinda bad for your opponent, but it feels really good for you. So I love Mirror Entity, and having 5 secrets will actually make your opponent misplay because he doesn't know which secrets is in play, and like they have the instant impact on the board, unlike traps for Hunter, which have to be triggered by attacking. Those cards, Counterspell, Mirror Entity, are triggered by your opponent playing a card, which is much more important for us and for him than just for triggering by attack. So I love Counterspell and Mirror Entity, and I really like that I found a deck that's actually capable of playing those cards well and win at the same time. Now, next card, Harvest Golem. It's only one. And it's only one because we have no spots for the second one. It's a cool creature, 3/3 with Death Rattle, so it's a buff for the Undertaker, and we're kinda liking 3 drops in this deck because we have only Kirin Tor Mages and Harvest Golems, because I don't really want to play any of these secrets on turn 3. So having a 3 creatures on turn 3, it feels better than playing just 2. But unfortunately we don't have a second spot for the second Harvest Golem. Kirin Tor Mage, what can I say? 3 mana for attack creature, 3 attack, it's really okay. It can trade for like a Dark Cultist, which is also important, and more important is that you can play a secret from your hand for free. And I was just extensively talking about that secret, so you already know that. Why is it so important? So we just can skip to the next card, and it's Fireball. Like, I think only Hyped was, I mean in the competitive scene, was using one deck with just one Fireball, or maybe even without any Fireballs, but in my opinion Fireballs are so good that they are like staples for Mage for now. They're just too good to not be played. They can act like a removal for almost every single creature, because 6 damage is enough to kill almost everything. And they can act as finishers, because 6 damage is a huge chunk of your opponent's health, so that's really an important card to actually finish off a Handlock, or raise a Hunter, or, you know, finish off Zoo, finish off a Doomguard. There are many things you can do with the Fireball, and also it's a pretty card when it's golden. So yeah, you got 2 cards that are basically one of the best Mage cards available, and also, more importantly, it's a spell, so they can buff the Mana Worm. Polymorph. Polymorph has 2 really important targets here, and one of them is Sylvanas, the second one is Ragnar's, because you have actually no answer to those 2 cards. We are playing no silences here, so the one Polymorph is acting like one, like a super silence, because you will transform 8 creature to 1/1 ship, and yeah, watch out. This is a beast, so watch out when you're playing against a hunter. But the one Polymorph is like, it feels like it's needed, because it's also a taunt bypasser when you need to finish the game, so it has multiple purposes, and it's a spell to buff the mana verse, so yeah. Water Elemental. It's insane when it comes to the stats. It's 9 points of stats for 4 mana, which is really impressive, but actually the skill of this creature is really important, because back in beta, Water Elemental didn't freeze when your opponent had armor. Like, if a warrior armored up 2 times, so it had 4 armor or 3 or whatever, but not below 3, and you did hit with the Water Elemental, he was not frozen. And now it bypasses the armor when it comes to freezing your opponent, so this acts like a kind of weapon removal without actually removing the weapon, which is really important against Hunter and Warrior, and also Paladin. because you find yourself also in this position when you can duplicate the water elementals to actually keep in check the warrior. When you think about a warrior and he plays like 4 weapons or maybe even 5 with the core hole, you can actually counter 1/6 of his deck with just attacking with the water elemental, which is insane. You just counters, you just counter like half of his hand if you get lucky with attacking with a creature, which you already will be doing, but you will get also freeze your opponent from attacking your creatures, which is really good. And water elemental is one of those creatures that actually can draw like a hunter's mark or a execute, because it has so much hit points, so that will be not used on your Sludge Vultures, Sylvanas, or Ragnars, which is also really important. Lothar, that's the best card in the game. It's basically it's the only deck that doesn't play Lothar, and I think maybe it should. It's Freeze Mage, because Lothar is just, in my opinion, is broken. It's the card that needs to be changed, because the battle cry is too powerful, the stats are too powerful. Even with a 5/5/5 vanilla would be okay, and maybe it would be even played here. Well, Spec Knight would be better, but with 5/5/5 is actually really good, and with that battle cry, well, it's just OP. If you could play 4 Lothars, I will play 4 Lothars. That's how good it is. Sludge Vulture. Uh, it's really important when you raise someone like Zoo, like Hunters, and any other aggro decks. And it's also a buff for your Undertakers, which is really important. And yeah, that's it. It's just a huge body that sticks to the game, to the board, so you can deal more damage or keep your other important minion safe. So Belchers are auto include in this type of deck. Sylvanas, after the change of the Death Rattle triggers, it's one of the best legendaries, le legendary cards in the game. So you got also a cute combo with Sylvanas being Firebolt from her hand. It's like a 2-card mind control, which can also be really surprising for your opponent. So that's a thing to remember. The Black Knight, back when you were playing in the Sitsuri Cup, like every single deck was playing 2 Belchers, and Black Knight is one of the best answers to that. So yeah, it felt like I had to include. It's still a good choice, because so many Belchers being played, and Houndmasters, and Mishas from Animal Companions, and well, actually there are many tones you can destroy the Black Knight, but yeah, we can discuss that also later. The one Flame Strike it's really needed, because even if it's just only one card, it poses a threat that your opponent wouldn't want to overextend. Like if the information went public that this deck doesn't play Flame Strike, every single deck would play really aggressively with its creatures. So just spam the creatures, and you have no way to deal with those. And by playing just one Flame Strike, your opponent will be in the fear that he actually loses his whole board in turn 7, which is really important for us to play those mind games on your opponent, so he won't overextend, because that's the most important thing against this kind of mage. If your opponent has more creatures than you do, you will lose. This is the most case. This is the most common side when you're playing this mage. You don't want to get outnumbered, and the mirror entities, the Flame Strike, the Belchers, the Mad Scientists are for that, because you will get value from those cards, like the Water Elemental too. So it's really important to have that one Flame Strike, just to keep your opponent intimidated, to not overextend. And Ragnaros, it's a, well, it's just a powerful creature. It has an instant effect on the board, which is really important. And in this kind of deck, you can find yourself just finishing the game on turn 8 when you can just hit face of your opponent. So yeah, that's really cool. And duplicating Ragnaros feels, well, it feels weird to have like two Ragnarses in your hand and you just played one the turn before, so just for those shenanigans you want to play the Ragnaros, it's pretty cool. And yeah, keep also in mind that this deck was built for a tournament with a whole setting, with a battle format, and my idea was to actually ban Hunter, which in retrospect maybe it wasn't so important because when we were testing with Toyota and Carles, we thought that Flare will be really impactful on this deck, but the truth is like if you get a counter spell for free from Mad Scientist or from maybe Current Tor, then the Flare is actually a 1 for 1 or 1 for 0, because in the case of Mad Scientist you don't pay any mana, you don't pay any card from your hand, and if you play it from Current Tor Mage you don't play, you don't use any mana but you use your card from your hand, so you basically lose nothing and your opponent just loses 1 mana and doesn't get to cycle the card from the counter spell, so you don't have to fear actually the counters, the flare, but you have to fear the creatures instead. So you want to raise the hunter and not just get outvalued by the flare. So keep that in mind that this is a tournament deck and it was meant to ban hunter, but I think like nowadays I would just ban Warlock because Zoo is one of the worst matchup. You can improve it of course by switching some cards and getting some more AoE or maybe, I don't know, using Crown of Cold and stuff like that, but I think like this deck is really tweaked and I was tweaked at that point of the game, so it felt really good to use it at the Seed Story Cup. So let's go to the games, and I will play with my really good friend and one of the best players in Poland, Pozmyvam, and we'll see which decks will he use for the games.